Hello, world, Bri. Let me get up and greet you.
Have you ever stopped to wonder, as Stewie Griffin plots yet another world-ending scheme, how would this toddler hold up in court? No, just me. All right, well, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into Stewie's chaotic criminal career to figure out just how long this baby genius would spend behind bars if he faced real-world consequences.
Now, I know you all hate eggplants, but... What on earth was that?
From illegal weapons manufacturing to attempted murder, Stewie's rap sheet reads like the darkest episode of Law and Order. And yet, he somehow gets away with it every time, probably because he can barely talk to strangers without his pacifier. But not here, not today. We're going to analyze his actions through the lens of real-world laws and see just how many lifetimes he'd owe to the justice system. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a lot. So, let's start small, because even a toddler's crimes can add up. Let's begin with the basics. For a 1-year-old, Stewie Griffin has caused a shocking amount of property damage. One of his favorite hobbies? Smashing Brian's belongings. Whether it's shredding his novels, wrecking his car, or outright destroying his laptop, Stewie's destructive streak knows no bounds. In legal terms, this would fall under vandalism or criminal mischief. And let's be real, Brian's probably too broke to replace any of it. For instance, the time Stewie destroyed an entire set of Brian's unpublished manuscripts, that's intellectual property destruction, and depending on the value of the work, this could land him a $10,000 fine or even jail time.
Please, you guys are going away for a long time.
Hey, what are you in for? I said Caitlyn Jenner wasn't brave and beautiful.
Oh, and remember the time Stewie crashed Lois's car into the harbor? Yeah, that's felony-level damage. Assuming the car cost around $30,000, that single act of recklessness could land Stewie 5 years in prison. All this, and we're just scratching the surface. Stewie's disdain for his mother, Lois, isn't exactly subtle. In fact, it's a core running gag of the show. But let's think about it from a legal perspective. Stewie doesn't just dislike Lois. He harasses her constantly. From verbal abuse, blast you woman, to repeatedly threatening her life, Stewie's behavior easily crosses the line into criminal territory.
Big man, turn around. If you got something to say, say it to my face. Oh, you can't hear me now. All right, that's it. I was going to watch the movie, but forget it. For the next 5 hours, you're my bitch.
Under harassment laws, threatening someone's safety, even verbally, can lead to hefty fines and jail time. If we tally up Stewie's consistent threats to Lois, let's conservatively say 10 notable instances, he's looking at 10 counts of harassment. Each count could carry up to 1 year in prison, which means this toddler's temper tantrums just earned him another decade behind bars. Stewie's schemes often require funding, and he's not above bending the law to get what he wants. Remember the time he stole Brian's credit card to buy supplies for one of his elaborate plots? That's theft and identity fraud rolled into one neat little package. In real-world terms, stealing someone's financial information is no joke. Identity theft alone can carry a sentence of up to 10 years in prison, and if we factor in the monetary value of the items he's bought, like parts for his death rays or time machines, Stewie could easily face felony charges. Let's estimate this happens at least 3 times in the series. With 10 years per offense, that's another 30 years on his sentence. Honestly, the fact that Brian hasn't reported him yet is nothing short of miraculous. By the way, if you like all of this, please smash that like button. It's more legal than any of Stewie's crimes. And speaking of legal behavior, did you know it's totally above board to hit the like button on this video? While you're at it, smash that subscribe button too. It won't cost you a dime. Unlike Stewie's latest death ray expenses. Trust us, this channel is safer than leaving your wallet near Stewie. If you thought breaking and entering was reserved for burglars and heist movies, think again. Stewie has broken into countless places, from Brian's room to Quahog's nuclear power plant, all in pursuit of his next big plan. In legal terms, unlawfully entering someone else's property, even if you're a baby, qualifies as breaking and entering. Depending on the severity of the crime, this could carry a sentence of up to 10 years. Let's assume Stewie has done this at least 5 times, and we're looking at another 50 years added to his sentence.
We'll have to deal with these marauders ourselves. Rupert, man your station. All right, you undead bastards, time to send you back to hell! Ah!
Let's be clear. Stewie Griffin doesn't just have an arsenal, he has a full-blown military stockpile. From ray guns to bazookas, this toddler is better equipped than most small countries. And he's not exactly keeping it quiet. Remember the time he showed up to a family barbecue wielding an RPG? That's not just overkill, that's straight up illegal. In the real world, possessing unregistered firearms or military-grade weaponry is a federal offense. The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, defines unlawful possession as a crime punishable by up to 10 years per weapon. And let's not forget that Stewie manufactures many of these weapons himself, making him guilty of illegal arms manufacturing and trafficking. Let's estimate Stewie has at least 10 major weapons, ray guns, flamethrowers, etc., each carrying a potential 10-year sentence. That's 100 years just for possession. Add another 50 years for manufacturing and trafficking, and Stewie's looking at 150 years before we even talk about how he uses these weapons. When Stewie isn't threatening his family, he's busy experimenting with explosives. Whether it's planting bombs in Lois's purse or detonating fireworks indoors, Stewie's love for explosions is as chaotic as it is dangerous. One memorable episode even shows Stewie setting off a chain of explosions that nearly flattens the Griffin house.
Hey, Stewie, you all set to go trick-or-treating? Whoa, what the hell are you doing?
We're under attack, Brian! By zombies and vampires and a Mexican princess!
Stewie, those aren't monsters, they're kids, they're trick-or-treaters.
Trick or
Under U.S. federal law, the illegal possession or use of explosives can carry a sentence of up to 20 years per incident, especially if it endangers lives or damages property. Considering Stewie's history, we can conservatively count at least 5 significant explosions in the series. That's 100 years added to his sentence for explosives alone. And let's not forget the collateral damage. Each explosion leaves a trail of destruction that would result in fines, lawsuits, and even additional charges of reckless endangerment.
2, 3! Can I count to 3? For God's sake, I'm already shooting at a 5th grade level. Excellent. The weather machine is nearly completed.
Now, let's talk about the big leagues. Stewie doesn't just play with guns and bombs. He's also dabbled in biological and chemical weapons. In one episode, Stewie develops a mind control serum, which he tests on Brian with disastrous results. In another, he attempts to release a deadly virus as part of a world domination scheme. In the real world, creating or using biological or chemical weapons is considered a crime against humanity under international law. The penalties for violating treaties like the Biological Weapons Convention, BWC, or the Chemical Weapons Convention, CWC, are severe, often resulting in life imprisonment or even the death penalty in some countries.
Fare thee well, broccoli. What the hell is this?
If we conservatively assign 2 counts of biological weaponry development to Stewie's record, that's 2 life sentences added to his tally. And honestly, that's being generous. This kid has bioweapon enthusiast written all over him. Stewie doesn't just hoard weapons, he tests them too. And who better to test on than his own family? Whether it's zapping Brian with a shrink ray or trapping Peter in a force field, Stewie has repeatedly subjected his loved ones to dangerous experiments. In legal terms, using untested weaponry on others, especially unwilling participants, could be classified as aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, or even attempted manslaughter. Each instance could carry a sentence of 5 to 10 years, depending on the severity of the harm caused. Let's say Stewie has tested his weapons on family members at least 10 times. That's another 50 to 100 years added to his sentence. At this point, the Griffin family should really consider pressing charges, or at least investing in body armor. In some episodes, Stewie's weaponry seems to come from very exotic sources. Ray guns, shrink rays, and doomsday devices aren't exactly sold at the local hardware store. This raises the question, where is he getting this stuff? If Stewie is importing weapons from foreign suppliers, he's guilty of international arms smuggling. a crime that carries a sentence of 20 years per transaction under U.S. federal law. Let's assume Stewie has made at least 3 international deals to acquire his arsenal. That's another 60 years added to his record.
Very well then, if I can't stop them from the outside, I'll stop them from the inside.
At this point, it's safe to say that Stewie Griffin's arsenal isn't just a collection of toys. It's a criminal enterprise. Between the possession, manufacturing, and use of weapons, this toddler has racked up centuries' worth of prison time. And we haven't even touched on how he uses these weapons for his schemes. Maybe someone should send Stewie to daycare, or at least confiscate his shrink ray. Let's not beat around the bush. Stewie Griffin doesn't just think about murder, he actively tries to pull it off. And the target of his homicidal rage? Mostly his own mother, Lois. From crossbows to poison, Stewie has concocted countless schemes to eliminate her. Take the 2-parter episode, Stewie Kills Lois, and Lois Kills Stewie, where he shoots Lois and later stages a full-scale coup against his own family. Even though it turns out to be a simulation, Stewie has repeatedly acted on these impulses in other episodes, making it clear he's not just fantasizing, he's trying. In real-world terms, attempted murder is a Class A felony, punishable by 20 years to life in prison per attempt. If we conservatively estimate that Stewie has made at least 10 attempts to kill Lois throughout the series, he's looking at 200 years in prison just for trying to take down his mom, and that's being generous. This baby is practically a professional at this point. Stewie doesn't just stop at violence, he's also fond of taking hostages. Remember the time he kidnapped Brian in the infamous "Where's My Money" scene? Or the time he held Meg at gunpoint to force her to take him to Chuck E. Cheese? Under U.S. law, kidnapping, defined as unlawfully seizing or detaining a person against their will, is a serious federal offense. Penalties can include 20 years to life in prison per incident, depending on the severity. If we count at least 5 instances of Stewie holding people hostage, that's another 100 years added to his record.
Crazy, you got. Oh my god!
And let's not forget Stewie's flair for theatrics. Whether it's tying Brian to a chair or threatening Chris with a flamethrower, his hostage situations are the stuff of nightmares. If this baby were real, he'd make true crime headlines in no time. If there's one thing Stewie excels at, besides world domination, it's torture. The most infamous example is the "Where's My Money" scene, where Stewie beats Brian senseless for owing him cash. This isn't just a one-off incident. Stewie frequently subjects his family and friends to psychological and physical torment. Legally speaking, torture is considered a crime against humanity in extreme cases, but even in everyday scenarios, it qualifies as aggravated assault. Penalties for aggravated assault vary, but can result in 10 to 20 years in prison per offense. Let's estimate that Stewie has tortured at least 5 people over the course of the series: Brian, Meg, Chris, etc. That's another 50 to 100 years on his sentence. Oh, and if we include psychological torture, like Stewie's manipulation of Brian and Meg, we'd need an entirely separate calculator. When Stewie isn't torturing his victims, he's straight up assaulting them. From punching Brian to hitting Peter with a baseball bat, Stewie isn't afraid to get physical. Even his frequent use of weapons, like mallets and frying pans, would qualify as battery with a deadly weapon. In legal terms, assault is the act of threatening harm, while battery involves physical contact. Aggravated assault or battery with a weapon can lead to 10 to 20 years in prison per count. Let's conservatively estimate Stewie has committed at least 10 counts of assault or battery throughout the series. That's another 100 to 200 years added to his tally. Let's not forget Stewie's penchant for issuing death threats. Whether he's threatening to blow up Lois or planning to annihilate the human race, Stewie rarely keeps his homicidal intentions to himself. In real life, making a credible death threat can result in 5 years in prison per count. If we estimate Stewie has made at least 20 such threats across various episodes, that's another 100 years on his sentence. At this point, Stewie isn't just facing prison time, he's rewriting the record books. Between the attempted murders, kidnappings, and acts of torture, Stewie Griffin's dark side is a legal nightmare. His behavior isn't just dangerous, it's downright villainous. If this were the real world, Stewie wouldn't just be a toddler in trouble, he'd be America's most wanted. And the irony? Most of his victims are members of his own family. The Griffin household might want to consider filing a restraining order, or several. Stewie Griffin isn't your average toddler. Most kids are content with crayons and cartoons, but Stewie, he's got his eyes set on world domination. Throughout the series, Stewie has repeatedly attempted to seize control of the planet, often with the help of doomsday devices, mind control technology, or a good old-fashioned tyranny. One notable example comes from Chitty Chitty Death Bang, where Stewie builds a device to enslave humanity. Another is A Mission Impossible, where he tries to eliminate his unborn sibling to protect his global ambitions. In legal terms, attempting to overthrow governments or take over the world falls under terrorism and crimes against humanity, carrying penalties ranging from life imprisonment to the death penalty. Let's conservatively count 5 major world domination plots. Each carries a sentence of life imprisonment, adding 5 life sentences to Stewie's growing tally. Stewie isn't just satisfied with ruling the world, he wants the option to destroy it. His arsenal includes devices capable of mass destruction, such as lasers, nukes, and even black hole generators. In Meet the Quagmires, Stewie uses a time machine to alter reality and erase people from existence, essentially an interdimensional doomsday scenario. Under real-world laws, developing or deploying doomsday devices violates multiple treaties, including the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty. These actions are considered crimes against humanity and carry penalties of life imprisonment or death. If we assign 3 doomsday-level plots to Stewie's record, that's 3 more life sentences. Honestly, at this point, he's not just in trouble. He's a cartoon supervillain on par with Thanos. Stewie's time machine isn't just a scientific marvel, it's a legal nightmare. From erasing people from existence to altering historical events, Stewie's time travel escapades cause chaos on a universal scale. In Back to the Pilot, Stewie and Brian create alternate timelines, some of which are dystopian nightmares. While time travel isn't real yet, let's imagine the legal repercussions. Tampering with historical events could result in untold consequences, such as the collapse of governments or the destruction of civilizations. Erasing people from existence, that's essentially mass murder. Given the severity of these actions, we can classify time travel crimes as hypothetical genocide or terrorism, carrying penalties of life imprisonment or more. Let's assign 2 life sentences to Stewie for his reckless manipulation of time. Stewie's schemes rarely end without casualties. In Patriot Games, he detonates explosives during a football game, causing panic and potential injuries. In Lois Kills Stewie, his coup d'etat puts countless lives at risk, as he fires missiles and engages in open combat. Mass casualty events, whether intentional or due to negligence, qualify as terrorism or mass murder, punishable by life imprisonment or the death penalty. Let's conservatively assign 3 major incidents to Stewie, adding 3 life sentences to his record. Stewie doesn't just break local laws, he's a global offender. His actions routinely violate international treaties, from arms trafficking to bioweapon development. For instance, his mind control devices in Chitty Chitty Death Bang could violate the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. His attempted bioweapon attack in Stewie Loves Lois breaches the Biological Weapons Convention. Each violation could carry life imprisonment. If we assign 3 counts of international law violations, Stewie earns 3 more life sentences. At this point, Stewie Griffin isn't just a criminal, he's a walking international incident. His world domination plots, doomsday devices, and disregard for human life have racked up life sentences faster than most supervillains. If we were to try Stewie in an international court, he'd likely be the poster child for why toddlers shouldn't have access to high-tech weaponry. But perhaps the scariest part, Stewie's still a baby. If this is what he's capable of at 1 year old, imagine what he'd do in his teenage years. Let's just hope the Griffin family invests in some serious childproofing. After analyzing Stewie's long history of criminal behavior, it's time to tally up his sentence. Let's break it down by category. 1. Petty crimes, property damage, 5 years. Harassment, 10 years. Theft and fraud, 30 years. Breaking and entering, 50 years. Subtotal, 95 years. 2. Weaponized toddler crimes, illegal firearms, 150 years. Explosives, 100 years. Biological and chemical weapons, 2 life sentences. Weapons testing, 50 to 100 years. International smuggling, 60 years. Subtotal, 310 years, plus 2 life sentences. 3. Crimes against people, attempted murder, 200 years. Kidnapping, 100 years. Torture, 50 to 100 years. Assault and battery, 100 to 200 years. Death threats, 100 years. Subtotal, 550 to 700 years. 4th, global threats, world domination. Plots, 5 life sentences. Doomsday devices, 3 life sentences. Time travel crimes, 2 life sentences. Mass casualty events, 3 life sentences. Violations of international law, 3 life sentences. Subtotal, 16 life sentences. So, how long would Stewie Griffin spend in prison if he faced real-world justice? Let's combine everything. Prison time, 955 to 1,105 years. Life sentences, 18. At this point, Stewie's sentence isn't just about prison, it's a mathematical impossibility. Even if he were reincarnated a dozen times, he'd still have time left to serve. In short, Stewie Griffin is a 1-year-old who's managed to break every law in the book, and then some. What's the moral of the story? Well, it turns out that giving a toddler access to high-tech weaponry, infinite resources, and a time machine isn't the best idea. Stewie Griffin may be a hilarious character, but in the real world, he'd be the youngest criminal mastermind in history, and the justice system would have a lot to say about it. But let's not forget the other side of this coin. Stewie's schemes rarely succeed. Sure, he's tried to kill Lois a dozen times, but she's still kicking. His world domination plans? Always foiled. At the end of the day, Stewie Griffin isn't just a criminal, he's a failure, albeit a lovable one. And that's a wrap on Stewie Griffin's criminal career, or at least what we could fit into one video. But what do you think? Did we miss any of Stewie's most outrageous crimes? Head to the comments section and tell us which of Stewie's schemes deserves the harshest punishment. While you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe, because if we're diving into cartoon characters' prison sentences, you know this channel is just getting started. See you next time and watch your backs. Stewie might be plotting something as we speak.